You know, the biotech sector is famous for its absolutely wild swings, and boy, is it living up to that reputation right now. We are going to unpack 4 stocks that are making huge headlines, 3 that are just soaring on some incredible news, and 1 that's a pretty stark reminder of just how fast things can change. Let's dive in.
So what is the deal here, right? Why are these specific names, IBRX, CRVS, NVAX, and NUVB, suddenly the talk of the town? Well, it's this crazy mix of clinical data, big news from regulators, and massive partnership deals. And honestly, each one tells its own unique story about the high-stakes, high-reward world of biotech.
All right, so let's meet our key players. First, you've got IBRX, and its story is all about the FDA. Then there's CRVS, which is being driven by some really exciting clinical trial data. After that, we have NVX, which just landed a monster deal with Pfizer. And then there's NUVB, which kind of shows us the other side of the coin, a really persistent downward trend. Let's kick things off with the one that's been on an absolute tear. Okay, first up, immuno-oncology bio, ticker IBRX. For a ton of biotech companies, the ultimate gatekeeper, the one that holds the keys to the kingdom, is the FDA. And for IBRX, that relationship is the entire story right now, and it's what sent this stock into total overdrive.
And just look at this number. In a single Friday, the stock just rocketed up at nearly 40%. I mean, this isn't some slow and steady climb. This is a full-on market explosion. So you have to ask, what on earth lit the fuse?
Well, here it is. This is the catalyst. The company came out and said it's had constructive discussions with the FDA about its bladder cancer drug. Now, you have to understand, in the biotech world, those 2 little words, constructive discussions, are basically like striking gold. It signals progress, it cuts down on uncertainty, and it gets investors super excited about a potential approval. But that's not the only thing fueling this fire.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. This chart shows the short interest, and it's a massive 36.48%. That means that over a third of the stock that's available to trade is being borrowed by people betting the price will actually go down. So when you get unexpected good news on a stock this heavily shorted, it can trigger what's called a short squeeze. All those people betting against the company have to rush to buy back shares to cut their losses, which ironically just pushes the price up even higher, even faster. It's a really powerful and volatile setup.
So, where does the stock go from here? Well, it's a bit of a tug-of-war. Some analysis suggests this whole upward trend could keep on running for a little while. But other, more short-term charts are flashing a bit of a warning, hinting that the price might be due for a pullback. It's that classic battle. The amazing fundamental news is pulling the stock up, while some of the trading patterns are suggesting it might need to cool off.
All right, let's pivot to our second company, Corvus Pharmaceuticals, or CRVS. So, if IBRX's story was all about dealing with regulators, this one is all about the science. This is that classic biotech story we love to see, one driven by a potential breakthrough in the lab.
The huge news for CRVS is some really promising data from a phase 1 trial for their drug targeting atopic dermatitis. Seeing the word strong efficacy this early in the game is a massive green light for investors. It means, hey, this thing seems to work, and it's for a condition that affects a ton of people, which means a potentially huge market.
And hey, does this sound familiar? We're seeing that high short interest theme pop up again. At over 20%, it's not quite as extreme as IBRX, but it is still really significant. It just means that any good news gets amplified as all those short sellers start to feel the heat. And this quote just captures the whole vibe perfectly. See, traders aren't just reacting to this one piece of trial data. They're already thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. They see the massive potential for this drug, and they're already starting to speculate about what comes next. A much higher valuation for the company, or maybe, just maybe, a big money partnership with a pharma giant.
Speaking of partnerships, that leads us perfectly to our third company, NUVB. Its recent explosion in price isn't just about its own science. It's about getting this huge vote of confidence from one of the absolute biggest players in the industry, Pfizer.
So what was it that Pfizer wanted so badly? It's all about this little thing called the Matrix M adjuvant. The easiest way to think about it is like a turbocharger for vaccines. It's an ingredient you add that kicks the body's immune response into a higher gear, making the vaccine way more effective. This is Novavax's secret sauce, and it is incredibly valuable.
And this right here shows you just how valuable it is. The deal gives Novavax $30 million right away, with the potential for up to $500 million down the line. But you know, even more important than the cash is the validation.
When a titan like Pfizer puts their name on a deal for your technology, it's like a massive stamp of approval that makes the entire market sit up and take notice.
And would you look at that? Here's our recurring theme one more time. Novavax's short interest is at 35.34%, right up there with IBRX. This chart really hammers the point home. All three of these soaring stocks share that same key ingredient, a huge number of traders betting against them, which just adds this whole other layer of rocket fuel to the mix.
So we've just seen three incredible stories of upward momentum, all driven by big news, great data, and major deals. But we all know the biotech sector is a roller coaster. Is everybody winning? Well, not exactly. So let's look at our last company, Nuvation Bio, or NUVB. This is the complete counterpoint to everything we've just talked about. Its story is one of a steady and pretty relentless decline. This timeline really tells the tale. See, unlike the other stocks that were moved by one big dramatic event, NUVB's story is one of a slow, painful bleed that started late last year. Without any kind of positive catalyst to change the story, the stock has just consistently drifted lower and lower, and the chart suggests that trend isn't over yet.
The really crucial lesson here is that momentum is a two-way street. With no good news in sight to change its path, the technical outlook is just plain bearish, with some projections pointing to prices that are significantly lower. It's a tough reminder that in biotech, a lack of good news can sometimes be just as damaging as outright bad news.
Okay, so we've looked at four really different stories here. What can we pull from all this? What are the big picture themes that kind of tie everything together?
It really just boils down to these four things. First, catalysts are everything, period. Whether it's news from the FDA, good trial results, or a huge partnership, one single event can change the game overnight. Second, high short interest is like pouring gasoline on a fire. It just makes the moves bigger. Third, the excitement in the community really matters. And finally, you just have to accept that volatility is the name of the game. These huge gains and steep drops, that's just part of the territory.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. In a sector that is so completely dependent on these singular news events, the next huge market-shaking catalyst is always just around the corner. The only real question is, what's it going to be, and which company will be at the center of the storm?